Go ahead and call the Hayes City Commission / Russell City Council joint meeting to order. All 5 commissioners of Hayes are present. And Reese is not here. I'm sorry. 4 commissioners are present. Well, I didn't notice that. Thank you. Same thing. We will discuss R9 transfer proceedings, presentations from staff and attorneys. Toby Doherty.
Toby Doherty, City Manager. Thank you. I think it's probably best to start with some housekeeping items, maybe for the benefit of everybody in the room, and maybe the press. Go around the horn and introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Brad Wagner from Russell. Do you want me to say anything else?
Whatever you want to say, Brad.
I just recently retired from Edward Jones. I was a financial advisor.
Good evening and welcome everybody for Hayes. I'm Sandy Jacobs. I'm a Hayes City Commissioner and Vice Mayor.
I'm Blaine Stoppel from Russell. Thank you for letting us come.
Shaun Musil, Mayor of Hayes. Welcome, everyone.
I'm Jim Cross. I'm the mayor of Russell. Thank you all for hosting.
Andrea Garland. I am Ward 3 council member from Russell.
Mason Reuter, Hayes City Commissioner.
Lonnie Litton, Ward 2 council member for Russell.
Elena Cunningham, Hayes City Commissioner.
Dustin Madden, Russell City Council, Ward 4. Bonnie Morrill, Ward 1, Russell.
Okay, we typically start off any R9 updates with a drought map, and so this kind of shows you where we're at. Obviously, I think Russell County is now entirely out of the drought. I don't know if that's updated yet, but in Ellis County, we're still in exceptional drought. So tonight, we're here to talk to you about what's going on in the actual transfer proceedings, what's upcoming, and then we've got some staff here to give you further updates. So this is the water transfer hearing schedule, and the meat of that process is the public hearing that starts in Wichita on July 19th. So we have been preparing diligently for that, as I'm sure John Quinde has told the Russell Group. We've been very busy with proceeding for that. Part of that process involves a public comment hearing that's going to be held tomorrow, and that'll be held 6 p.m. at the Black and Gold Room at Fort Hays State University at the Union. According to the judge's directions, the public comment hearing is just that. It is a venue for the judge and the ultimately the hearing panel to gather public comments on the proposed process. So the way it'll be structured is Russell City Manager John Quinde and I will start off with a brief presentation. Any interveners and commenting agencies will have the ability to offer their input on the transfer, and then the judge will open it up to public comments. And it is not meant to be a venue for debate. It is not meant to be a tit for tat. There's not going to be any response to erroneous remarks or clarifications for the record. It is just creating a record of the proceedings. There's still time if you would like to submit your written comments. They're due July 20 or June 26th. And the process to submit written comments is in the hearing notice. So if anybody would like to do that, they can. The 2 people that have been doing a lot of the heavy lifting, most of the heavy lifting legally, are David Traster and Daniel Bowler with Folston Siefken. They're here tonight to talk about the actual transfer hearing itself, and then the Supreme Court oral arguments that are upcoming. And then when they're done, and want to make sure you guys have ample opportunity to ask questions, when they're done, we'll turn it over to Jeff Heydrich and Burns and McDonnell, who will talk about the design process, where we're at, and be prepared to answer any questions. With that, I would stand for any questions you have, unless you're ready to hear from David.
My turn. So my name is David Traster. I'm a lawyer with Folston Siefken in the Wichita office. Toby asked me to speak about the process and that we're about to go through, and then he spoke about it and covered everything that I needed to cover. So basically, I would encourage you, if you have comments and can't make the meeting tomorrow, do submit written comments. The other thing about tomorrow is that the time that allowed to speak will be very limited, like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how many people show up. So if you have comments that are more in depth or longer, it would be good to submit them in writing. And there's no prohibition on you getting up and speaking. And whether it's members of the commission and the council, staff, or members of the public, you can come to the meeting, have your say, and submit written comments. They must be received in Topeka by next Monday, a week from today. So they have to be mailed, they have to be mailed ahead of time. So just fair warning. So this, as Toby said, tomorrow night is this public comment period. It's an opportunity for anybody to weigh in. And then we'll start presenting evidence on July 19th, and there are a ton of issues. I have talked to trial lawyers who just are shaking their head about, well, how do you keep it simple? How do you tell a story? And there are just many, many, many issues that we have to cover, because there are a lot of issues that are in the public interest, or the public interest affects a number of issues. So essentially, we're going to put on evidence from in Wichita from July 19th to August 2nd. I think there's one day that we're skipping. And the hearing will start on the 19th and has to be concluded within 120 days. So we anticipate that we'll put on our evidence, most of it, in that 2-week period, but we also anticipate that the hearing officer is likely to, let's have another proceeding, or to delay it, to continue, not to continue the hearing, but to continue the ability to introduce evidence for at least a few more days, weeks, and maybe up to 120 days. Once that hearing concludes, he has 90 days, under the statute, he has 90 days before he must issue his what's called an initial order, which is essentially his recommendation based on the evidence. Once he issues that order, the panel, made up of the chief engineer of the Kansas Department of Agriculture Division of Water Resources, the director of the Kansas Water Office, Connie Owen is her name, and then the director of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment Division of Environment, Leo Henning, ultimately makes the decision. And they have 90 days after the initial order is issued to issue a final order. That we anticipate that, we know that WaterPAC, the Water Protection Association of Central Kansas, a group of irrigators who are mainly focused on the Rattlesnake Creek, but have interests in Edwards County as well, and Edwards County are interveners and will be presenting evidence. There are also opportunities for commenting agencies to make comments, and the Groundwater Management District number 5 has said they would like to participate, and they will. The Division of Water Resources is the other commenting agency who is likely to be at the hearing, and they may or may not present evidence. There are numerous other commenting agencies that could participate, but we haven't heard from them at this point. So that's kind of the overview of the procedure in the water transfer proceeding. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Buller to talk about the Supreme Court issues. But before I do that, are any questions about the procedure for the water transfer? We'll be able to answer more specific questions in executive session. Let me introduce Daniel Buller.
Good evening, Daniel Buller from Fulton Siefken. I practice out of our firm's Overland Park, Kansas office. I've been working with Mr. Traster on this matter for many years. Toby asked me to cover the sort of appellate process that we just recently gone through and are going through in the change application proceeding, which is currently pending before the Kansas Supreme Court, because that's a proceeding that's running parallel to the water transfer proceeding now, and is also a similar procedure that we could find ourselves going through following the hearing that Mr. Traster just described. So following the panel's order in the water transfer proceeding, any party will have an opportunity to file an action at the district court appealing the panel's order. And at that point, similar to the change proceeding, the parties will have an opportunity to submit briefs, to make arguments. In the change proceeding that occurred at the district court in Edwards County, we were successful in getting a master order during that proceeding, approving the city's change applications, authorizing them to change the ranch water rights from irrigation to municipal on the ranch to the cities. And then WaterPack, who David referred to in his discussion, appealed that ruling to the Court of Appeals, and the district court affirmed the master order. And so we were successful at the district court, and then WaterPack appealed that to the Court of Appeals, and we filed a motion to move that appeal from the district court directly to the Kansas Supreme Court, in essence jumping over the Court of Appeals, which the Kansas Supreme Court can grant at its discretion, and in this case they chose to grant that. So we're now before the Kansas Supreme Court. Most of the heavy lifting in that matter has been completed, at least from our end. We've submitted our brief in response to WaterPack's opening brief, and WaterPack has one more brief to file. That's going to be due in the coming weeks, after which oral argument, which Toby referred to, will take place on September 13th. Following our oral argument, and again, this is in the change proceeding, okay? It can get a little confusing because they're running along dual tracks. The change proceeding is at the Kansas Supreme Court. The transfer proceeding is getting ready to begin the fact finding at the hearing that's set for to begin on July 19th. But following oral argument at the Kansas Supreme Court, the court will take the matter under advisement, and unfortunately there's no set schedule for them to release a final order on that, so we don't know exactly how long, or even approximately really how long it will be before they issue their order. And but we remain cautiously optimistic that we'll receive a good order from the Kansas Supreme Court to finalize the change proceeding, and we'll then go forward with the transfer proceeding. After the transfer hearing, as I mentioned, either party can appeal that, which would essentially require us to go through a similar appeal process that we just made it through at the Kansas Supreme Court, or during the change proceeding. So that's the general legal procedure we're looking at on appeal for both of these matters and the status. I know it's probably not super exciting, but I'd welcome any questions from the council members or the commissioners.
So if we have a favorable warrant or a favorable outcome with the Supreme Court, how long will it take for the appeal? Is there a time frame on that, or?
If we have a favorable outcome from the Supreme Court in the change proceedings, that case is over.
Okay.
They're the final word, unless WaterPack were to file a petition for cert at the United States Supreme Court, which would be very unlikely to succeed.
Let's hope.
If we, on the other hand, if we don't get a favorable opinion from the Kansas Supreme Court, then we go through an appeal process?
Well, that would
Or-
totally depend on the nature of their order. So, they could do any number of things that we don't, they could affirm the order from the lower court in its entirety. They could affirm it in part, and depending on the nature of their order, it would be, that would be a new decision tree as to where we went next. We can speak in more detail about that issue in executive session.
Okay.
Anything else? Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
That's all right.
sorry.
I can introduce Jeff. I would like to have Jeff Heidrich come up with Burns and McDonnell and talk about the design process. Oh, actually, before Jeff starts, I did want to remind you that right now we are in the middle of vetting firms for land acquisition services for the project. That'd be a separate contract from the design. So we started out with, I believe, 8 or 9 firms. I don't see John. And we narrowed it down to 3, and we've been vetting those 3 in hoping of selecting one firm to move forward with. So we're still on track to get a contract in front of the governing body on August 10th to get a land acquisition firm on board. We want them to be part of the initial design. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Good evening, Jeff Heidrich, Senior Project Manager with Burns McDonnell Engineering Company. I am the overall project manager for the R9 design portion. There we go. So just to go through different aspects of the project, we'll talk about the well field and the pipeline kind of as 2 independent things. Obviously, they all work together, but we kind of have them separated in 2 different contracts. So on the well field, that's actually the wells, the well houses, all the interconnecting access roads, the power. It will go to a 1 million gallon ground storage tank, and then we'll have a high service pump station. And then once it leaves the property, then we'll consider it the pipeline part, the 65-mile pipeline. So go through quickly just a schedule overview on the well field side. Really looking at about a 2-year process on this. That does include all the way through state reviews and approvals. So this would get us to the bid phase to bid this out to contractors. Looking at starting summer, fall with site review and survey. Really, we actually met with a surveyor here earlier today, local surveyor that we're working on getting under contract. They think they could potentially be out there in July to get that work started. We'll start determining the kind of where we want to do the test drilling for the well locations and start getting some of the topo survey work done. Our team's also starting the environmental process, kind of a desktop review for the ranch there. A couple other things that aren't on here that we're doing is we're setting up all the specifications, really the requirements for the contractors to bid on for the drilling of the wells, and getting the water quality data and all that. So that's ongoing. Once that's ready, then we'll bid that out to contractors that have been pre-qualified drillers. And then we're hoping to have that, I know it kind of mentions fall for test wells and sampling. We're hoping to start that possibly mid-August to get that process moving a little bit quicker. And then once we have all that information, that's when we'll come up with the final well plan for the first phase of the 7 wells that we're going to look at doing. And then on the pipeline portion, again, this is really from the edge of the well field site, 65 miles back to the existing pipeline just south of town. So again, it's pretty much on the same schedule, about a 2-year design schedule. we're looking at. The first part of this is really going to start with the alignment analysis. The study that was done back in 2015, there's really a corridor that we're looking at for the pipeline alignments. So we're actually driving some of the alignments this afternoon. We're going to go out again tomorrow, look at some of the alignments and try and narrow that down to really one that looks a lot better than the others, and really narrow that down so we can just focus on surveying that one and dealing with that one, so we're not having the cost of surveying all these different alignments and everything. But part of that, we'll look at environmental issues that we may need to avoid along those alignments. We'll come up with a final conceptual alignment map, go over that with staff, and also do a material evaluation for different pipeline materials. So that's really what's coming over this summer, and then probably September, October is what we're looking at for starting the survey work to get that process moving. So I know that was brief, so I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
The former irrigation wells, the pivots that we are no longer using, where are we going from the number we had that were producing water when we were farming it to what we will be looking at now?
So it will end up with 14 in the end. Brian, do you know how many pivots were out there now?
Not exactly.
There were 40-some pivots. There were 50-some points of diversion, I believe,
Okay.
to serve the 40-some pivots.
Yeah. So the 14 would be the ultimate. The first phase that we're looking at for now would be 7 wells, and then with a future expansion for 7 down the line if needed.
Not trying to put the cart before the horse, but acquisition of materials. Is it going to be a smooth sailing to get the materials to build the stuff because I know we're having problems getting, a truck is 2 years out.
Yes, good question. So we recently just bid a project in McPherson for Board of Public Utilities. It's very similar. It has 3 wells, 20-mile pipeline. It has a water treatment component. The pipeline just recently bid, and everything seems to be back to normal. There were a few electrical VFDs that were kind of out for a year. Those are kind of coming back to about a 6-month time frame. So they haven't had any issues getting the pipe. It's a 20-inch pipe, similar size to what we're looking here. So I think everything seems to be getting back caught up again.
The pumps and everything are readily accessible now again to actually pump the water.
Yep, they will take some time because we'll have to go through a submittal process review. But yeah, they seem to be back to where it was pre-pandemic.
Anybody else?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any closing comments, but I would say if you have any just general comments to make before the governing body's adjourned to executive session, now would be a good time to do it.
First, if you have anything.
I have one more question with the engineering. The quality of water, you were talking about testing and stuff. We were at a meeting, I guess, 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, down in Greensburg, and some of the farmers that were adjacent to the R9, when we quit farming and weren't producing or taking water anymore, they commented that their water was getting worse. So I don't know where we're at with that, like with nitrates and everything else. I mean, it's been, what, Toby, 4, maybe 5 years now? 6 where we haven't farmed it.
So that'll be part of the investigation process in drilling the monitoring wells or the test wells. We'll actually take water samples. So we'll be able to check at each of those points and see kind of where things are at this point in time.
So we do quarterly sampling in conjunction with Burns and McDonnell at the property. We have, do you know how many observation wells, Brian? Jeff? A dozen or more observation wells. So check for water quality and then the depth to water to see how the aquifer is performing. Since we shut down farming operations, nitrates are improving. When you're not putting fertilizer down, the nitrate problem gets better. And then a lot of the in-migration for this water comes from the sand hills to the south, and so there's not really much nitrates going in there. There is total dissolved solids and sulfates. Okay. I pulled that one out. So those are issues that we have to deal with. The initial investigation showed that we could blend a significant amount of water in that phase one. The majority of phase one we could blend with our water. You guys are way more suited to treat that with your treatment facilities than we are. But it will only be in the subsequent phases that we need to look at some kind of advanced treatment. But that's what Jeff mentioned. Part of that initial test drilling that's going to take place this winter, they will find those really pockets of not only good quantity water, but good quality water, just to make sure that we're tapping the best water first for our sources.
I'll just go around like we normally do. Commissioner Cunningham, do you have anything else you want to ask? No. Commissioner Reuter?
No, I want to thank you all for being here. I know, Traster, you and your team, and Burns McDonald, all the stuff that you guys have been doing the last few years has just been absolutely phenomenal. I know getting all the information sent to us, and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening a lot of the time, but obviously that's why we have you guys around who know what you're doing and are going to do it right, so we can finally get this process to the end. So thank you guys for all the hard work you guys have done for many years. Thank you. My wife does that too.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I don't have any other questions. I do also want to thank everybody for being here tonight, and particularly our legal team. You're terrific. There's no one more terrific in my eyes than Toby Doherty. The man is a water guru, and we appreciate that, and I think anybody that questions that needs to just sit and visit with him for a little bit. But we really appreciate Toby in our area. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just closing comments. Also, thank Toby. Like I said, Mason. The emails we get from you sometimes, I'm like, what am I looking at? But I've learned quite a bit over a few years, and we appreciate that. Russell, thank you guys for being here. I mean, we're all in this together. Toby and I, in the last month, I think we've been to Victoria and Ellis, and just kind of telling everybody, keeping them up to date. And Ellis County, we've been talking to them, what we've been doing, and we've kind of sold this as a region. This is for everybody. It's not just for Hayes, not just for Russell. And, we want everybody to grow and be sustainable. So I've had a lot of people ask recently, they've seen us do the design agreement, and they're like, oh, is it finished? Are we ready to go? And wish we could say yes, but, we're moving forward, but we got a long ways to go. And I think we're closer than we ever have been. I think you've got a sheet over there. We started doing the research in the 70s, and it's 2023, and as Mason would say, you weren't even born. But we're moving forward, so it's exciting, and it's for us all to get together, knowing that we're knocking on the doorstep. So other than that, I guess we'll.
I guess I can. Monty, you have any other questions or comments? Dustin. Monty.
Yeah, real quick. The biggest thing that concerns me is the public just doesn't know what's going on about this. I'm getting questions from people, and they know that I was part of the envoy that went to Washington, D.C. back in December, and the general public has no idea of the demand that we need, how badly these two communities need this water to get to us. And thank you, everybody, for their work on this.
Commissioner, could I interject something? Council member. There was a lengthy period where time appeared to have stopped. We hammered out the terms of the master order 2017-ish, and then we had to wait for it to get finalized, and then we had to wait for all of the adjudication of that, and then COVID hit, and it was 2022 before we were able to move, and it just was excruciating. I mean, John and I sit around and try to find things to do, just to help the process along. But it's happening now, and that's why
And
these
that's
guys
why
are
I'm getting
overworked
more
right now.
questions now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Yeah, it's and you can tell the people that something's happening right now. We are reaching the crux of this process. Now, that doesn't mean there can't be an indefinite feeling legal delay once that's done. But right now is the meat of what we've been working for since 2014, when the governing bodies signed the joint interlocal agreement and directed us to start this process. So.
The way I've told everybody that I've talked to is we're still in the hurdle phase, but the sprint's coming.
Good point.
Absolutely.
So lawyers get a bad name sometimes for a whole range of things, right? Some deserved. One of the things we deserve being is a criticism for is how long it takes us to get something done. So Toby called in 2014 and said, "We want you to move forward." And early 2015, we were working on it, kind of along, and it dawned on me that if we didn't get this done, Toby was going to be down my throat. And so I just want you to know that I've pushed as hard on this as I possibly could. And Daniel has pushed on this as hard as we could. We have not let grass grow under our feet. We have not done it like we normally do and take our time. And I get it, that people are anxious, frustrated, or maybe they just don't know. But we've done everything. I don't want to say everything. We've pushed hard. We've pushed really hard. And it hadn't there hadn't been a lot of delay from our side, from the lawyer's side. And that's not to be critical of anybody else. Just want you to know that we know that Toby can be the nicest guy in the world until you cross him or don't do what you say you were going to do. And then, so I'll shut up, but we've pushed hard.
We appreciate that very much.
Blaine, you have any?
No, I'm good. I think
Brad?
Lonnie answered.
I would like to personally thank our city manager, John Quinday, and Toby. This is a regional project. We are trying to do the best we can do between the two cities to get this done. And I don't care where you're at in the state of Kansas. There are not we have the two best city managers around, and they work well together. Our city staff has been working well together. I go into John's office, and you can't see the desk for the papers. And it's a stack here and a stack here, and he says, this is R9, and then the next thing you know, this is something about the engineers. So it's a great project. It's a regional project. If we can get this done, Ellis County, Russell County, the two communities, along with the communities within our county, each of our counties, and communities along the way. I'm probably one of the oldest people in the room, and water has been an issue with both communities for a long time. And this isn't one of those things where we're going to get the water and everybody's going to have a beautiful green lawn, and we're going to open up the taps and the way it goes. This is for the people, it is for industry, and it's going to keep us viable in the state of Kansas for a long time. There are not many regions in the state that work together as well as we do in Hayes and Russell. You know, I always remember the days over there in Sheridan Coliseum, the sign on the wall, and everybody knows what that was.
Yeah.
You know, flush twice, Russell needs water. So it was one of those things when we were back in D.C. and everybody couldn't believe I said that in Senator Moran's office. One of the first things I told him was, this morning I took a long shower. And he looked at me and I said, we don't take long showers in Russell. And I know they don't take long showers in Hayes. And the Marriott Hotel was paying for the water and I took a long shower. So it was, it's a project we have to keep moving forward on.
Mayor, I have one more comment after listening to Jim. I think it's really important that the people in the state of Kansas understand that our area out here is, if not one of the few, if not the only area that does not have a sustainable source of water. We do not have a sustainable source of water. Anybody that objects to this process needs to step back and think about that. We're saving our area and we're saving the region.
Yes.
We are on the cusp of history.
Yes, we are.
And
Yes,
it's-
we are.
And once this gets done, sustainable for 75 plus years.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would just
Gives
add.
me goosebumps.
Yeah, it does. I'll just add to that, the residents of our community for the water conservation, it's been in since the 90s, and it's just a way of life in this area, and we will continue to do that no matter how much water we have. But if we want to grow and be sustainable, we need this water, and that's why we're doing this. And once again, thank you all for being involved in this. Go to.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, I move that City Council recess into executive session with the city manager, city attorney, assistant city manager, water utility director, public works director, city clerk, and with the Hayes City Commission, its staff, and legal counsel to discuss litigation regarding the R9 Ranch pursuant to the consultation with an attorney on matters that would be deemed privileged in an attorney-client relationship, exemption KSA 75-4319, subsection B, subsection 2. The open meeting will resume in Hayes City Commission chambers at 7:20.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Madden has made a motion to move the city council in recess into executive session. City manager, city attorney, assistant city manager, water utility director, public works director, city clerk, and the Hayes City Commission, its staff, and legal counsel to discuss litigation regarding the R9 Ranch pursuant to the consultation with an attorney on matters that would be deemed privileged in an attorney-client relationship, exception Kansas statute 75-4319, subsection B, subsection 2. The open meeting will resume in the Hayes City Commission chamber at 7:20 p.m. Councilmember Stoppel has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried unanimously. We are in executive session.
Minutes to include the city commission, Russell mayor and council members, city of Hayes staff, city of Russell staff, Russell city attorney, representatives from the city attorney's office, representatives from Folston, and representatives from Burns McDonnell for the purposes of consultation with the attorneys for the cities of Hayes and Russell on matters privileged to the attorney-client relationship.
Second.
Hey, I got a motion by Commissioner Reuter, second by Commissioner Jacobs. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. We're in executive session.